My name is David Lovas. I'm a motion designer and video artist, and we're going to talk about non-narrative motion picture. Currently, I work as a video producer, which means I'm creating promo videos, animations, and interviews for a tech company. I'm also frequently directing documentaries and music videos. As an artist, I exhibit video installations, often combined with performance or digital art. And this is my favorite type of work. It's almost always non-narrative, and that's what I'm here to discuss today at TikTok Talks. So, the difference between narrative filmmaking and non-narrative filmmaking is that when you watch a movie or a TV show, it's usually narrative filmmaking. So it means it's telling you a story that starts at point A. Let's say you have a character. It goes to point B. So let's say something happens to your character gets into a conflict, and then you go to point C where the conflict is being resolved. So you have a story there that goes from point A to B to C. Non-narrative filmmaking is different. It either can be something really abstract, like an experimental film, so you don't have the storytelling scenario at all, you're just having a lot of images that are moving and you're just expressing yourself through visual movement, but you're not necessarily showing characters or not necessarily trying to tell a story. It's more like you're delivering a mood and you're just using this aspect of motion picture where things are moving and it's part of the art that you're creating. But also it could be something like a video loop. So in that case, your story starts at point A and it goes to point B, so something happens, but the end of your film goes back to point A. So the very beginning of your video is the exact same as the very end of your video, so that way you can turn that into an infinite loop and the same motion just goes over and over and over again. If you would like to use motion picture as a fine art medium, the equivalent of a painting or a sculpture, you can use the extra element of motion picture that it's moving, so it's not just a still image. But in a situation when somebody's watching a piece like that in a gallery or in a museum or maybe in a public art setting, it won't start at a very specific time, like a screening in a movie theater. People just gonna come and go and they just start watching your piece in a very random time. So in that situation, it's very, very useful to use non-narrative motion picture, because it doesn't matter in what part of the video they start watching it, and then when they decide that they had enough of it and they move on to the next piece. Another cool aspect of using motion picture as a fine art medium and present your work in a gallery or in a museum is that you have way more freedom and a lot more flexibility about how you're presenting your motion picture. If you create a film, it's either going to be in the theater or on a phone screen or TV screen, and the dimensions and the size and everything is already there, and you just have to adopt your work to those platforms. However, if you want to create a video piece in a gallery or in a museum, you have the chance to create your entire setup. So you can decide how big your screen is going to be, for example. You can make your screen so small that the viewer has to go really, really close to it, almost like peeping through a keyhole and just kind of watching something secret, and only one person can see it, and even them, they have to be really focused and look at this very tiny little image that's moving. But another thing you can do is you can make it almost too big. Like, let's say you can only watch this film in a small setting like a hallway, but you have this giant screen in front of you, so even though it's right in front of you, there's no way you can see the whole picture at once, because you're too close to it, so you can only observe small parts of it. So you have a lot of freedom of how big or how small your screen is going to be, and the size of the screen is very important. It adds a lot to the experience when you create a piece. But you can also create something that is called a multi-channel video piece. So you can combine different screens, and you can even create a piece when you have one screen on one side of the room and you have another screen on the other side of the room. And the two screens are synchronized and they're telling something similar, or they're part of the same video piece, but you always have to turn around, and it creates a situation when you have to pay attention to multiple screens, but they're still part of the same project. Another aspect that you have a lot of control of when you work with motion picture in a fine art setting is the length of your piece. So let's say the movement that you're presenting to your viewer could be so slow that it could take an entire day that something is radically different on your screen. So let's imagine a scenario where when you walk into a room and you see an image on the wall, and at first you can't even tell that it's moving, you think it's a photography. And if you stand in front of it and just wait a little longer patiently, you're starting to realize that the image is slowly changing. That's a very different effect that you can create in a fine art setting, but it wouldn't really work in a movie theater because it would be boring. But another thing that you can do is when you create a video loop, it could be so fast, it could be just 1 second and it goes over and over and over again. Probably the coolest thing about using motion picture as a fine art medium is you have all the aspects that you would have if you're a photographer or a painter. You can create an image, but you can add an extra dimension, which is time. So you can create the image and you can change it. But in most cases, you can also work with sound. So you can create music or sound effects, or you can express yourself through the sound element of filmmaking. But it also has the aspects that only sculptors can work with, which is utilizing the actual space around you, because your screen could be in the middle of the room, or it could be on the ceiling, or the shape of your screen could be strange. It could be a figure or a silhouette of anything. So you have a lot of flexibility with what type of effects that you're using, and you kind of have access to all of them. So if you're interested in non-narrative filmmaking, what I would recommend to you is to start to plan and create your own video loop. The way I would do it, I would start just drawing and treat it like you're trying to make a comic strip. You just create different frames and you make sketches about what's changing on your screen, and you only have to be sure that the very first frame is the exact same as the very last frame. And then you can just take your phone and you can film it, and if you succeed and if the last frame is identical for the first frame, then there you go, you already have a video loop. And then if you put it on loop, you can show it to your friends, and it doesn't matter in what part of the loop they join in and how long they're watching it, just like in a gallery setup. So thank you very much for watching, and have fun creating your first video loop.